Listener, please,
Nice and fresh.
please don't take this as anything more than leading into a bad joke that we're now going to have to contextualize. The New Brunswick Archaeology Podcast, featuring your hosts, Gabe Hrynick and Ken Holyoke.
Archaeology Podcast. I'm Gabe Hrynick in Manchester, New Hampshire, and I'm joined, as I am just about every fortnight, by Ken Holyoke in his basement bunker in Saskatoon. How are you, Ken?
Yes, I am joining you from Studio 346, and Gabe, we have done it. We are now podcasters sitting in lounging chairs, holding a microphone in my hand. I think this is the pinnacle. We've reached the apex.
It's right. Ken's actually hiding his other hand, so he's concealing how he's negotiating his morning there in Saskatoon.
What are you implying, Gabe?
Drugs, Ken. Drugs is what I was implying. You can imply whatever you'd like. And how was Saskatoon?
It was good. Yeah, it was cold yesterday. It's warmed up today. We were not running back to Saskatoon. We were actually driving quite slowly through slush and rain and ice on the way here. Mm-hmm. So we actually made two attempts to get here. But yes, we celebrated my wife's birthday yesterday, or on Saturday.
Chains on the Subaru.
Yeah. The Crosstrek is looking a little salty, and needs a car wash.
Yeah, well, that'll happen. So it's full on winter out there.
It looks like full on winter, but it's going to be like 12 degrees today, so it'll all disappear and look sort of like mid-fall again.
Yeah, that's it's not warm, but it's not cold, Americans.
Yeah. But and you were out on a run yesterday. Some kind of was this a mountain?
A trot. Really.
A trot.
It was it's not the sort of thing I usually do, but just a 5K in town here, and it was kind of on the bucket list to do in Manchester before we left.
Exciting. Yes.
Yep. But the listener can't tell, but I'm actually still in my running bib. I wear only performance fabrics now. I can walk into a room and suck all the moisture right out of it. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah. We should get some NB Pod wicking base layers for our dedicated listeners for those cool days of the field season.
It's true. Plus, that way we can look cozy sitting like this in front of the fireplace for the Christmas card this year, Ken.
Exactly.
Yes, for the NBR Pod Christmas card. Yes.
Yeah.
So Ken, one of the things that the listener might notice is neither of us are in New Brunswick right now. I'm closer than you are, but I'm still about 6 hours away. Yeah. And if you even were to get to New Brunswick right now, how many stops at Airport Chili's would it take?
Actually, Saskatoon goes pretty direct, so I think we could get either to Halifax or Toronto from here. So,
that's right.
So
Ken,
just a couple bounces.
6 hours directly after the flight. That's Canadian airfare for you, listener.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but Ken, this and the other thing is we're going to talk to someone actually this episode about New Brunswick archaeology.
We are. Yeah, we're back. This is another episode in our Great Sites series. Featuring a dear friend of ours, Alexandre Pelletier-Michaud.
That's right. And he's going to be talking about the Bristol site. But that really captures, I think, just the diversity of geographic locations this podcast engages with, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. We're really continental at this point.
Yeah. And not only is Ken in a lounge chair, he's using better audio equipment than he usually does on the road because Emmanuel and Quoddy are trying to help us grow the footprint of this podcast. Isn't that right, Ken?
Yeah, that's right. I think it's essential that we read a quote from producer Emmanuel last night that
Emmanuel,
gives you.
If you want to voice over this to make it sound a little more dulcet, that'd be fine.
So it says, oh, I've lost it here. Hold on. We're just gonna have to stall here, folks, for a moment.
In fact, listener, it just said he got our most recent audio files, and he just said, "Guys, I've lost it." That's how enraged he was by our inability to follow the directions here on the New Brunswick Archaeology podcast.
Loving the new mics, by the way. I could cry. You know what, Emmanuel? I bet our listeners are crying tears of hi-fi joy.
I hope they are. And through those tears of hi-fi joy, one of the things they might be trying to do is rename the New Brunswick Archaeology podcast. And Ken, I think we've made clear on this podcast that because we support labor, we would never actually just steal a name for the podcast, right?
Exactly. This has been definitely an exciting time in the labor movement in Alberta, and compensation has been part of it. I mean, human rights are now part of the conversation in the labor movement in Alberta, but that's a conversation maybe for another day. But yes,
we haven't heard the prize read yet.
Excellent. Yes, but yeah, we would always make sure we compensate them.
Yeah, because we ourselves are sort of a workers-owned cooperative.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, that's not quite true. Quoddy and Emmanuel don't get ideas here, but we're mostly a workers-owned cooperative.
I don't know. They give some ideas. I mean, like the audio equipment, for example, is one of the ideas in Riverside. Actually, the reason we are recording in this sort of futuristic technology is from suggestion from the broader co-op participants.
Yeah, although I think in classic Marxist theory, they were still what we would call wage slaves.
that might be, but we're keeping the rent low. That's the purpose of this co-op.
We are indeed. And so, Ken, but as you alluded to here, it's labor season here on the New Brunswick Archaeology podcast, and collective bargaining is in the air. The Alberta teacher strike, the postal worker strike, along with USW, IUOE, IBB, and BCGEU, and indeed the entire US of A, are all out on strike. And now, Ken, I think I speak for both of us as union members ourselves that we stand in solidarity with our organized brothers and sisters. In fact, Ken, we're both in collective bargaining ourselves, and I'd like to take this opportunity to say, indeed, even reassure our shop stewards and employers that nothing in this prize read should be taken to reflect our views of either of our current labor situations. And of course, Ken, in addition to being pro-labor on this podcast, it's also safe to say we're pro-family.
I would say so. Yeah.
You're involved in your children's lives to a level more than required by evolution, even for case-selected primates, and I've never, as Jim Croce put it, done 90 days for non-support. But Ken, sometimes it can be hard to support the family and the brotherhood, whether that's because you're trying to work yourself while the kids' teachers are out on strike, or because you're trying to manage childcare while you yourself are on the picket line. Ken, that's where the Ma Jones line of child carriers comes in. Because we at the NB Arc Pod know that as long as your work is on the right side of the picket line, every day might be take your kid to work day. And that when you're dumping bosses off your back, you can't always dump the baby off your back. Let me outline some of the child-friendly transport systems in the Ma Jones line for babies here, Ken.
Oh, wow.
Right up through toddlers, we can really get them out on the factory line, the office, or the picket line itself. And I'm just going to run through a couple of options here. The Harlan County line of baby carriers is guaranteed to keep baby on board and your back free of pain, whether you're assembling pickup trucks or out on strike. Featuring a 20-liter capacity, that's, do you know what 20 liters is, Ken?
That'd be, I don't know.
How many shots of Courvoisier is that?
Courvoisier, I think we would need 2 bottles in order to fulfill that, at least. Yeah.
Yes. And a 48-pound weight limit, you can carry tots up to the age they would have made fine little workers in a West Virginia coal mine. But that's not all, Ken. The suspension system ensures a virtually painless experience, and each comes with a cup holder that can be converted for picket purposes to hold a sign saying something like, quote, "The 11th commandment is not to cross a picket line," end quote. And each one of these packs comes with a special "which side are you on" feature, so it can be worn on the front or on the back. But Ken, we know solidarity doesn't mean that one child-moving solution is right for everyone. For the worker preferring a wagon-type baby perambulator, Ma Jones has partnered with one of North America's premier all-terrain stroller wagon manufacturers. Because when you're on the line, you may be a wobbly, but you can't afford a wobbly wagon. And that's why Mingo County Flyer, available in a 2, 4, 6-seat model, is designed with a chassis that's as comfortable going round and round a factory in circles as it is being lugged desultorily behind you while your children still are not able to go to the public schools. And that's not all. Each Mingo County Flyer comes equipped with rubber tires that can be removed and set fire to. It also folds for easy storage, and really each one of these items is a reminder that you can't spell solidarity without solid. Of course, the full line of Ma Jones child carriers are Union Maine. The ergonomics here are really incredible. Yes, you, listener, have nothing to lose but your pains. Convenience is here, and it can be take your kid to work or to the picket line day in this season of bargaining. Ken, where would our brothers and sisters send the new name for this podcast?
They would send that to the completely non-union-owned Gmail address. That is newbrunswickarchaeology@gmail.com. That's New Brunswick Archaeology, all one word. Archaeology spelled ARCHAEOLOGY, newbrunswickarchaeology@gmail.com. They can also find us on Instagram at new_Brunswick_archaeology or on LinkedIn. Just look for New Brunswick Archaeology Podcast in the search bar on LinkedIn.
That's right. And Ken, if you reach into that mailbag, what is in there?
Well, I have my mailbag pulled up on a tablet, and so this is really hard to read because of the way that the Gmail app operates. So let's see here.
And also, listener, as we pointed out, Ken is juggling a microphone, an unnamed substance, and a iPad right now.
Exactly. Okay, so we got to go back a little ways here. Actually, before we get going here, we did have a verbal podcast title recommendation. We just finished an interview with Kelly Berlin, and that'll be an episode here the next fortnight. And her partner suggested that the Maritimes Munsell was the title, and was wondering if this was still an active contest, and yes, it is, and we have taken it under consideration.
We have, yes, it's on the table. We've got Maritime Munsell on the table.
On the table. Okay, so we've got an email here from Will, and it says NB Archaeology Podcast short form videos. Hey Gabe and Ken. Oh, this might be a scam. Hey Gabe and Ken, I came across the New Brunswick Archaeology Podcast. Such a cool concept. Love how you're sharing local history and culture in an accessible way. Oh, I'm a Fredericton-based content creator who runs @skate_oasis, a skateboarding page with about 10,000 followers on Instagram and 3K on YouTube. I built my audience through short-form video storytelling, and I'm now helping local podcasts do the same, turning their episodes into engaging reels and shorts that reach new listeners. Oh, he's offering discounted spots. Now, Will, that's a great offer. We actually have a staffer on the task right now. So Quoddy is the one who is working on producing these shorts.
Can we use the phrase member owner today?
Member owner, yes.
Yeah.
One of the brothers in arms, and in solidarity with Quoddy's protected position, we will probably not outsource that labor. We will keep it in-house, but we appreciate reaching out, Will, and appreciate the follows, and stay tuned for some excellent shorts as a result of the software that we're using makes it much easier.
It does, yes.
Yeah. So I will
really
admit,
for us, hiring someone is what's made it easier.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I will admit I wouldn't be able to tell you if we have another email in here from a human. This Gmail app is about as unusable as an email platform as it could be. So it's impossible to tell what is an ad and what is actually an email. So
no kidding. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so listener, maybe what we'll do, if you wrote in, stay tuned. We'll look at your email once Ken is back at a computer.
Yeah. And one thing I do want to highlight is thank you to everybody who has grown as part of our LinkedIn network. And if you are interested in the podcast or you're a listener, follow us on LinkedIn, and you'll get lots of socials updates there as well.
That's right. And Ken, where would someone send in either mail or a new name for this podcast?
So they would send that to newbrunswickarchaeology@gmail.com. That's New Brunswick Archaeology, all one word. Archaeology spelled ARCHAEOLOGY. New Brunswick Archaeology@gmail.com. You can also send us a direct message on Instagram at new_Brunswick_archaeology, and archaeology spelled the same way. And you can find us on LinkedIn now, and that is just search for New Brunswick Archaeology Podcast in the search bar on LinkedIn.
That's right. And so, Ken, we alluded to, we've got an exciting episode coming up with Alex Pelletier-Michaud, and we've actually got, we think we've got a series of episodes that are likely to be interesting to the New Brunswick listener, but also the broader listener coming up. And so, maybe without further ado, I won't say what those are. I'll just leave them in suspense, and we'll switch over to Alex, and we'll see the listener for the hit pieces.
Yep, we're heading up to Shiktehawk, so enjoy the conversation, folks.
Talk to you soon, listener.
Welcome back. Today we are joined by Alexandre Pelletier-Michaud, who is an archaeologist with over 10 years experience working in Quebec, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick in research and CRM capacities. He has a BA in archaeology and a visual arts certificate from Université Laval, and his MA from the University of New Brunswick. Alex is an expert at lithic technological analysis and lithic material analysis, and somehow as eloquent in English as his native French. Alex has published on Paleo-Indian site finds in Nova Scotia in Canadian Journal of Archaeology, and has a forthcoming publication, actually just out publication in Archaeology of Eastern North America on the Hank, but is joining us today to talk about the Bristol-Shiktehawk Site, caches, and early woodland ceremonialism in New Brunswick. It may be over the internet, but lordy, he's coming home. Bienvenue. Welcome to the podcast, Alex.
Thank you. And what a great intro. And what?
Thanks for joining us, Alex.
Yeah, my eloquence. Let's see how that goes. That was setting the bar a little high, but yeah, I'll try.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It has been. Thank you for having me, guys. It's been way too long.
We're happy to have you. It's nice to see you too. Alex and I worked together, in the lab, but also a couple field seasons out in the wilds of New Brunswick. Spent a lot of time at the Indian Point Motel in Port Elgin in southeast New Brunswick. Yeah. Yeah, so
I thought we were going to do this at the Indian Point Motel. That was what I'd heard.
It would be. I don't know if that place is condemned yet or not, but
I think the Wi-Fi wasn't that great, if I remember well.
But the reason we've got Alex on is not just for his good looks and his hotel reviews, but we'd like to talk about we're doing a great sites episode here, and the great site today is the Bristol-Shiktehawk Site. So can you tell us a little bit about that site, Alex, and how you came to be involved with it?
Yeah, so the Bristol-Shiktehawk Site is a site in Bristol, Florenceville, New Brunswick. I came to be acquainted with the site through trying to find a subject for my master's thesis at UNB. And should I start with George Frederick Clarke? Probably it's kind of the root of the problem here. So.
The tooth root of the problem.
The root canal of the problem. Yeah.
We both got it. That's
So, the Bristol-Shiktehawk Site was discovered, let's say, by a man named George Frederick Clarke, who was a dentist and a writer, a fiction writer from Woodstock, New Brunswick. He was very well known in his time as a writer, probably as a dentist too locally. I never heard anything about his prowess as a dentist. That's maybe there's a thesis.
Didn't seem like he was ever in the office, so I'm guessing he wasn't all that good.
No, he was very big into salmon fishing and smoking his pipe, and I believe that's how he got into a vocational archaeology, hanging out around salmon pools. Mostly in central New Brunswick, which is interesting because it's an area that hasn't seen a lot, even recently, a lot of archaeological attention. So George Frederick Clarke, again, born in the late 19th century. I'm not sure exactly at what time he started picking up artifacts, but he got very into it. And started collecting and, digging. He had his trusty razor sharp spade, I think he called it, or something like that he was carrying around. And digging up sites all around New Brunswick. And it's kind of a morally, it wouldn't go today. We wouldn't find that cool today, for sure. But he did a lot to actually raise awareness of archaeology in New Brunswick. Because he was he was a communicator. He was a very vocal guy about what he was finding, and he was sharing a lot of his interest in archaeology. So he found the Bristol site in 1932. It is located between the Big and Little Shiktehawk streams, so in Bristol, New Brunswick. He found there 43 bifaces. That he reported finding.
That's 86 faces total.
Yeah, that's a lot of faces. That he reported finding in several bunches. So he left a lot of notes about his finds all over the province. He wrote a book on that topic as well, someone before us, where his finds were illustrated, and he's a story guy, right? So he tells all of his finds as stories. So it's storytelling much more than reporting, the way he frames it. But very interesting read, and he reports. So it's but sometimes hard to understand in archaeological terms where the way he reports finding those bifaces. But some of them at least were bunched together, so touching, and all of them were within a very a fairly small area. On the lower terrace, at the base of the slope on the lower terrace, it's along the St. John River, the Woodstock River. So, yeah, and he found them to be exceptional. He, having seen a lot of lithics from his other archaeological endeavors, he right away found those to be exceptional and very interesting and fascinating.
Yeah, and so his work wasn't really what we would call kind of archaeology today. He was interested. He was also basically kind of looting sites, right? And not really, and he wasn't very meticulous. Wasn't super meticulous note taker by any means. But he has produced sort of a record that we otherwise don't really have a sense of what was going on. There's a ton of sites that basically we know about because of Clarke's involvement, and in the middle of Woodstock, and there's a number of sites, for example, that are now under the hydroelectric dam behind Matquack that he recorded on, and so he was one of the first people to identify artifacts at Bristol, and in terms of the timeline, did he find the cache, like the bifaces were basically the first thing that he found, or was this basically he had been working there for a while and this was kind of the big find at the site?
He reports it as being on his first day there. I don't know. I don't think he came upon them like right away, but fairly quickly. Which when we will talk about the history of excavation there, he got very lucky because it doesn't seem, the way he describes it doesn't seem like the most likely spot, like the way we think about site locations now, and how we try to predict where sites are going to be. The bottom of the slope is not necessarily the first place we would look, I think. And I believe he started digging on the upper terrace, the higher terrace, and didn't find all that much there, and then moved down and stumbled upon those. And then he went back a second day that same summer and found a bunch more that seemed to belong to the same assemblage, to the same, that they belong together.
And so this is sort of a cache of artifacts. Is that pretty rare in New Brunswick?
It is. It is. There's only so many, and we will get into caches and how this one might or may not be considered one, and how others have been considered one that may not be as well. So, do you want me to get into that now? Should I?
Yeah. We'll start with a definition maybe, and then kind of work out from there. Yeah.
So a cache from French cacher, to hide. A cache is
cache and cachet also being things we're trying to get more of on this podcast.
Yeah. oh, it's coming. It's coming now. Yeah. So by definition, a cache should be something that you put somewhere with the intention of retrieving it later on. That's kind of a cache is a stash. Basically, you're putting stuff there. It's what we would call a logistical cache, where you put things there maybe because you're routinely coming back to that area and you want to leave some. You don't want to carry that stuff and bring it back. You just leave some there. Or you can't transport everything. You cache some raw material, for example, that you have too much to bring with you, so some of it gets cached and then you come back and retrieve it later. That's what a cache by definition should be. But cache archaeologically has been used kind of I would say abusively in the mortuary context. Basically, it came to be that any large assemblage of not necessarily large bifaces, but artifacts that are in large numbers together came to be referred to as a cache. But if it's in a mortuary context, well, they're not. It's not a cache. You're not supposed to come back and retrieve them. But it is the way that it is often used and understood in the discipline, unfortunately.
So is there kind of alternate terminology that you would propose that would be more appropriate, or is there it's cache, whether it's in a burial context or not, or mortuary context or not, and there should be sort of a terminological difference?
I think there should be. I think there shouldn't be any mention of cache when it's a clear mortuary context, because it just doesn't apply, and it doesn't bring anything new or anything interesting to the interpretation of the find. I believe. I'm not a cache expert or anything, but semantically it makes no sense, right? It's just not useful.
And so what? Why are archaeologists then, and the public, for example, and Clarke for that matter, so fascinated by caches in the sense that we're talking about, where there's this cluster of bifaces, these number of sort of like really unique objects kind of found all clustered together?
Well, I mean, you said it, right? It's a cluster of unique objects clustered together. It's impressive by its nature. There's a mystery about it. It's a treasure, right? It's a hoard, or it's kind of the classic buried treasure that you find. I mean that, in a very general sense. Why it triggers the imagination, because like, oh, why did people bury all those riches here? Like, why is that wealth of object? Why has it been buried in the ground? And I think there's just kind of a natural desire to explain that, to find there's a mystery to it.
So I guess in this case, one thing we should maybe talk about is, why did people put those artifacts in the ground, do you think? So you'd mentioned it's a mortuary context. I guess we should loop back to that interpretation a little bit, and how you came to that interpretation. Tell us what this site is.
I don't know if I'm not saying that the Bristol bifaces are a mortuary deposit. I really have no indication that it would be. I actually think that they might be a cache. But we have very limited clues here, very limited context. As we said, maybe I should loop back to the beginning, where, it was poorly recorded. There's no, I mean, I listened to your recent episode with Jess Robinson talking about all the early woodland not caches, right? But ceremonial mortuary deposits and all of that. And we don't find here any of the objects that are usually associated with mortuary deposits, like block and tubular pipes and gorgets and slate objects or shell or copper. So there's none of that here, and there was none of that also in subsequent excavations at the site. So I'd say that's the first indication that mortuary context may not be our first. No indication of red ochre either, which might have been another thing. So maybe not the first. It wouldn't be my first guess for this site.
And so what were so after Clarke was there, so he finds this cache or this cluster of bifaces. He spends a little bit more time there, and my recollection, and I actually didn't reread Clarke's chapter on this before we interviewed, so I should have done that. But my read of it was that he was sort of disappointed by what he found subsequently, and kind of moved on to other things after that, right? And
you start with the 43 bifaces, and it's all downhill from there.
Yeah.
But
there has been professional work done at Bristol since that time, and so what have we learned about Bristol following Clarke's work?
We've learned there has been a lot of people have revisited the site. I think because Clarke was very early on kind of advocating for it. He was very proud of what he found there, and I think he wanted to know more about it. There has also been some other private collectors kind of perusing the site, may I say. And it's actually it's one guy in particular, and it's in his collection that most of the interesting material has come out of the site there. So he was there, and Clarke was there.
Name and home address with the listener.
Yeah, I was there. I can't I don't know if he's still with us. So Clarke was there in 1932. And I have a little breakdown of every basically professional archaeologist who's looked at the site since. So in 1933, William Winterberg was visiting the province, and Clarke showed him a few of his bifaces. What's interesting is that he didn't show them all, and I've looked at Winterberg notes, and there was only maybe half of the collection that he was able to see. But what he did is he did just outline drawings of those artifacts, which are great because a couple of them are missing since from the collection. They've been we don't have them anymore, so we at least have dimensions and outline on those drawings. But he didn't go back and excavate on the site. Richard Pearson, he was with the, I believe, National Museum, excavated there in 1961. Again, in the 60s, Walter Kenyon of the ROM excavated there. David Sanger in 1968 for what was the Museum of Man. Chris Blair in 1991 dug some test pits there. David Keenly-Side excavated there in 1994 for the Museum of Civilizations. And then Brand Suddy excavated a bunch of test pits there in 2010. So yeah.
Actually, like considerable amount of archaeology work considering archaeological sites in New Brunswick. And and it's interesting too that you bring up like Winterberg was one kind of the first professional archaeologist that went out there, and that was sort of his like grand tour of the Maritimes, where my understanding was like most of what he was looking for were burial sites, wasn't it? Like that was sort of kind of was it an inventory and he just reported mostly on burial sites? Because I've gone through those notes for like he's reports on, for example, like there's a few random finds in the Keswick Ridge area that he reports on that are like the only known artifacts found in that kind of area. But my sense was that a lot of like there was a significant portion of that he was looking for mortuary sites in the area. Am I incorrect in that?
I don't know. I think you've probably read more of his notes than I have. I think I've only looked at what was really concerning this site, but I don't know because if he was, it's kind of interesting that he didn't go back to Bristol, where there was kind of a strong implication that it could be a burial site. So, yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
So, how did this collection end up being at UNB?
The Clarke collection, it was donated to UNB in 2006. So Clarke passed away in, I lost my notes here. I don't remember. Some of his collection was on display at the Woodstock Public Library for a while. And then I don't have all the details, but UNB ended up acquiring his collection for research and teaching purposes in 2006, and it's been cataloged and used for research since by students and professors. Great. So it's an amazing collection of there's so much. I mean, you guys are very familiar with it. I believe you just. You just published a paper on the paleo stuff in it, right?
Yeah. Which
I
think you went paleo crazy recently, is what I heard.
Yeah, exactly. We got a bad case of olditis since you left, Alex, and it's we only do old stuff now.
Yeah,
that's good. Yeah.
Gabe has moved firmly into the Pleistocene. Yeah. That's
It started with this all beef diet I got into, and.
So what have we learned about Bristol broadly with all that the excavation work that's gone on since sort of like the professional archaeological interpretation beyond sort of Clarke's romantic description of what's going on at Bristol?
So, like you said, a lot of attention from professional archaeologists, but most of these interventions were 1 or 2 days. Like, it was all kind of brief and mostly unsuccessful in a way. Nobody found anything very spectacular there that they were looking for, or at least some kind of understanding of what was going on there. So despite all of this work there's not that much information about this site, and there's not that many actual reports written about it, or like the most extensive investigation was the 2010 test pit campaign there, and I haven't kept up, but 8 years ago there was no report for that yet, and I really doubt that there will be one. So I haven't looked at all of these collections, and like I said, the most interesting most of them are a few flakes in a few bags, and it wasn't crazy or giving you that much stuff to work with. The private collection that has been collected on the side had a lot of things in there that were kind of similar to the Clarke bifaces, actually. So what I could say is that, and that's something that Clarke actually reports in his original, like in his first day there, he says, is something like, I didn't find any arrowheads or the usual stuff that I find around. So, and I think by arrowheads, he mostly meant, small points, small, side corner notched points that we would now associate with the woodland period. And looking at all the material coming out of that site, there's a strong, I would say, late archaic feel to it. Lots of and a strong impression that there was a lot of napping going on there. A lot of rock being cracked and worked there. There's a series of big stone blanks, like big things, quarry blanks, that were never used and kind of just left on site. A lot of rough outs for flaked and ground axes, kind of big, chunky, triangular rough outs that, again, not finished. A few of them finished or at least worked. And again, very few small, points, very few arrowheads, like Clarke said. Most of the smaller points, and there aren't that many, have very broad side notches or expanding stem, and again, more of a, I would say, late archaic feel to them.
Interesting.
I was going to ask though, Alex. So maybe we could focus a little bit on the tools you analyzed, or the bifaces you analyzed.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about those and what they looked like, what they seemed most similar to, what your analysis was?
Yes, of course. I think we should. So it is a series of bifaces. Some of them stemmed, most of them unstemmed. A lot of them are quite large, just out of the ordinary large, and most of them very, very well made, very thin, very expertly crafted. Not expedient tools at all.
Yeah.
And the bi-pointed morphology really stands out. And so not all of them are bi-pointed, but a lot of them are. Some of them more kind of ovoid in shape and lenticular and bi-pointed. Some of them more kind of angular.
Typical pre-Clovis point.
Yeah. One of them is very much like the what's that, Sinmar?
Yeah. Off the so and for the listener, these are really, really elegantly flaked, and they're very thin, and they're around like 15 or more centimeters long. Some of them, I
think the longest is like 19 centimeters long.
Yeah,
and actually the longest of the collection is one that we have lost, unfortunately, which would have probably been around 20 centimeters long.
So it's 3 yards for our American audience there, in terms of. But they're
furlong,
and they tend to be this, like you said, these bi-pointed varieties. So they're kind of lenticular in shape, and they're almost like facsimiles of one another, right? And so, and so that kind of, you describe them in a variety of different ways, and you kind of do a really detailed technological analysis in your thesis about sort of what you think is going on with the manufacturing practice. So what I think is kind of cool is you look at technology kind of in the use life of the blade, so how it was made, what it was used for, and what your interpretations are, kind of looking at particular features of those blades to tell a story. And so what did it tell you that we didn't already know about, for example, the Bristol cache, other than these are these beautiful bifaces, they're all kind of found together and they're really finely made, but what kind of stories came out of your detailed analysis of them?
Well, you mentioned that some of them are very similar, and that's one of the most striking feature to me. There are 7 pairs of artifacts in there, and 3 of those pairs actually associate one that is stemmed with one that is not stemmed, which is quite interesting. And when I call them pairs because there are some of them are almost identical in outline and same material and very evidently probably made by the same craftsperson as well. So first observation, so pairs of them and very also similar stems on there's contracting stems are what we found on those points, and those stems are almost identical. If you line them up, the shoulder angle is this exact same, the way the stem curves towards the bottom, the base of it is just it just perfectly lines up. And some of them, and in between artifacts made from different materials, and some of them a little thicker, like not necessarily technologically you would say that's kind of the same deal going on, but the hafting element is absolutely identical. So interesting.
And that's incredibly rare for the listener. Like, this is not something like, this is really unique. Like, you don't tend to see this kind of like facsimile and then kind of repeated patterning thing.
Very deliberate choices in the way those were made. So,
and do you think just made by one person?
Some of them for sure. Some of them, same material, like just a pair of bifaces. Unless it was some kind of, a little challenge. They were like, hey, let's take each chunk and make the exact same thing. But it really stands to reason that those would have been made by the same person, I think.
What materials are they made out of?
All kinds. There's a broad variety of materials. What's very interesting is that we don't find the so-called usual suspects in New Brunswick. So there's no Kineo in there. There is no Munsungen. There is no or local materials. The Tobic rhyolite or Washtemoak or like the most or Nova Scotia materials like Scots Bay, chalcedony and jaspers and all that. You don't see any of those.
But from France, right?
What's that?
It's all flint from France.
Exactly.
yeah, North Coastal France. That's yeah.
Yeah, it's from Brittany mostly. But all
she'll be on next fortnight to discuss.
yeah. There's I got to bring up my Achillean hypothesis later on. We'll get to that. But I'll they're all interesting materials. So we mentioned the Hink that we just got a publication that recently came out on, which we've identified as material from coastal Maine, from the Quoddy region, which is just highly variable. It's a meta sediment, right? Is that what we settled on?
What is the official name now? Because it was the we can wind it back here for the inside joke. The Hink. This is a type of material that appears on archaeological sites, and you guys can describe it. But I think for a long time was known as Hinkley Point metasediment.
And I think we're back to that, right?
We're back to that.
Yeah,
yes.
Okay. Yeah. After a long kind of winding, trip, I call it a rhyolite in my thesis, which was a mistake.
And for a while, it was
trying to be specific on it was a mistake.
And so part of the confusion here was that it's called Hinkley Point, which would make you think it's at Hinkley Point, and so naturally we went to Hinkley Point and couldn't find it, and then spent a long time looking other places, and then realized it is in fact at Hinkley Point. It just weathers to look like we were
So there's such a
plain sight.
variability, right? It's some of them are. So the first step was recognizing that those were the same materials. Some of them are just kind of a bright green with barely anything in it, and then the diagnostic feature here are little speckles, kind of cream-colored speckles throughout the material, and those appear on that green ground mass. But then some of them get very dark, almost like a dark gray, almost going into into black, but still with those speckles, and there's some banding on some of them. And then also some pieces weather to almost all kind of cream colored, and it's just a crazy material in that it's kind of shape shifting.
Yeah, and I should say, actually, I misspoke. We're calling it Quoddy speckled mudstone now.
Okay. I'm an author on that.
The listener will remember that Gabe likes to talk about rocks not being real, and has dipped his toes in lithic material sourcing here a couple of times. And so I think listener, you're hearing Gabe show his cards that he does indeed believe rocks are real, but he wants to define what they are.
Exactly.
That's
the confusion here, Ken, was I really only got interested once I learned that it was a pre-Clovis material. And then I believe everything about that. So we sectioned it, X-ray diffraction, all sorts of zapping. So just like to wind it back, whether it's mudstone or metasediment. Why would we want to wind it back? Let's just keep going on this.
But isn't a mudstone a metasediment? I think it is, right?
I don't know. The listeners should know that this paper involved machines that happen in these gigantic. It was like going into a gymnasium to meet this guy, and the equipment in there was. Each piece of equipment was bigger than Annex C, where the anthropology department is.
Now, so I think the takeaway here for the listener. So you said that there's kind of an absence of very local material.
You're doing this all wrong. Let me ask the question here. So, is it 16,000 BP or 20,000?
Gabe, you don't want to get me started on that. You don't.
So there's no local materials, and there's not any of these ones that you see common on archaeological sites like from Nova Scotia, from New Brunswick, or like Kineo, which is central Maine, and Honsinger, which is northern Maine. But you're seeing materials from coastal Maine, and where else? And what does that kind of tell you about the interaction going on between the people who made these elegant bifaces? Do you think they were made at Bristol, for example? Do you think they were brought there? And what does that tell us about relationships among ancestral Woolstugwig at Bristol or Shiktehawk and other people at this time?
So there's that. It's about a quarter of the assemblage that's made from that hink, that mudstone from coastal Maine. There's also some very dark, some like black material in there that is visually very similar to stuff we find a lot in the Quoddy region. Maybe a basalt, but I won't get into that. And there's a whole bunch of kind of unidentified materials that are kind of varied. Some of them, I said no Honsinger. A couple of them might be related to Honsinger, actually. Some red and kind of gray banded stuff that could be possibly, but it's only one or two artifacts in the whole lot. There's one in there that still has like a cortex, like river worn cortex on it. So maybe just that's a smaller one, a smaller biface in the group. So there might be some locally acquired material, kind of as it's possible to do in New Brunswick, kind of opportunistically. Yeah, there you go.
Like cobbles and things like that.
Yeah, on river travel, you just pick like we've all done. I think as archaeologists picking up interesting stones and you find stuff that's very workable, and you have no idea where it comes from, and it's not really identified with any known source for lithic materials. So, what's interesting about the coastal Maine connection is that It's from I think in the Eastport site. It was which is very close to Hinkley Point. It was reported that there was stone there that may be Tobic rhyolite. So that's kind of an interesting parallel of one moving north, the other moving south. So what can we say? There's at least a connection to this coastal area. What is the connection? Are those people that made those bifaces and left them there? Did they make them there? I don't know. There was some debitage of Hinkley Point mudstone on site in the various collection that I've looked at. Not a whole lot, and most of it was very weathered. Something I haven't said about the assemblage here is that most of them they look brand new. They look like completely unweathered and shiny and like very bright colors. Which is
astonishing for 20,000 years.
Kind of unexplained. Yeah, it is. But I think if you think about it, if it was kind of pre-glaciation, maybe the ice age, maybe the weight and the cold of the ice cap kept them.
Listener, please,
nice and fresh.
Please don't take this as anything more than leading into a bad joke that we're now going to have to contextualize. But
it's possible we've nuked the AI for something that everyone who tries to AI their final exams in Intro to Archaeology this year is going to screw up.
But so there's connections with the coast. There's all this kind of interesting stuff going on. The place name itself, Shiktehawk, might speak to why people were there too, right? There's kind of two different interpretations of like translations of it. What brought people to that particular location?
Yeah, I think Clarke reports it as, and that's that's I think to be taken with a very big grain of salt. That this local legend of a Wollastogic chief and a Mohawk chief, I believe, that fought to death there, and that Shiktehawk would mean something like "I killed him." That story, like in Sherbrooke here, there's a tiny little island on the Saint Francois River, and I was just reading this week that there's a legend there that an Abenaki chief and a Mohawk chief fought to death on that island, and it seems like a very recurring legend. And I don't know. I think that might be kind of a recent thing there. Somebody else brings it back to the pool, the salmon fishing pool that would have been at the mouth of the river there, which is, I think, probably more likely. And something about the shape of the Shiktehawk River kind of fanning into the Wollastock there. Like it has a delta at its mouth, I think, is the interpretation. It also shows that there's no real understanding of where that word might come from, because it's pretty wide ranging for explanation there between the salmon, I killed him, and the delta shaped river. I don't see the connection, but it is an interesting location because it's the start of a portage route that would lead you to the Miramichi River from the Wollastock. And I think that's much more interesting. If this was a good spot for salmon fishing, and also a natural stopping point on a travel route that connects the interior to the coast of New Brunswick, it seems like a natural spot for occupation at the very least.
Yeah. And I think if the listener looks at a 2015 paper from Holyoke and Hrynick, they'll see that caching is something that does occur along a portage route.
That makes a lot of sense.
But speaking of interactions and rivers, Alex, in addition to the Solutrean connection, these blades are plausibly within that early woodland ritual interaction sphere that we talked about. And you mentioned that we talked recently with Jess Robinson about aspects of early woodland ceremonialism. And where do you think that Bristol fits within this broader early woodland interaction sphere, which is the argument you made, or have you rethought that, or where are we on that?
Yeah, all over the place on that. It was an interesting listen with Jess on that topic, and I've been kind of an ex-archaeologist for a few years now, and it was interesting to go back into that and see, okay, we're still somehow somewhat at the same point, trying to understand that when I kind of left the topic last, it's. I think we don't understand very much of what's going on with in that period, and I think that maybe we're approaching it the wrong way in a sense that. Well, I mean, and I'm by far not the first one to make that point. That pointing out the differences between those different, Middlesex and red ochre and meadowwood. And what am I forgetting here?
Adena and
Adena,
Glacial Game.
yeah,
Glacial Game, and all of those. They have a lot in common, and it's just, I think, something. And I think it's to my sense, much more interesting to look at it as there's a cultural there's a shared kind of cultural reality at that point over the whole area where those things are found. That to me is much more interesting than the local variations on it, which are to be expected in anything. So trying to explain why this is a little bit different here than it is there, I don't think we can ever get to that. I don't think we can explain that. And I think what's more interesting is looking at what the globality is of this whole kind of phenomenon. So if you look at the assemblage morphologically, which is what we have because we don't have a lot of other context or, like I said, associated objects, or there's no dates, or there's no nothing else than the actual objects themselves. I found a lot of connection all over the place from the late archaic standpoints, even stuff from Labrador and Newfoundland, like a lot of raw mature points have very similar outlines to some of the standpoints, or even the bipointed points in the artifacts. There's one kind of outlier in the assemblage that is kind of a dead ringer for a mansion in blade from the terminal archaic. That's just kind of it doesn't really match with the other ones, but it is made from Hinkley Point mudstone, which kind of ties it in with the lot, which is something that kept coming up in this assemblage, where something is a little different, but it does have something that the others have, and I have this kind of weird little graphic that kind of ties them all together between materials and styles and kind of different kind of choices in their manufacture. So archaic connections, I think, are fairly clear to me. And then there's a lot that's in common with red ochre features and artifacts that are more from I think most maybe centered around Michigan, I think, or towards the Great Lakes, not too close to here. That's not something that comes up in the Northeast very much. Some commonalities with the Middlesex sites, like Augustine Mound. Some commonalities, but not like a clear match between the two. It's not exactly the same thing going on. So I would say it appears culturally related to all of those things, and it might be in my looking at it now, and of course like making a datation like with just visually what we have is kind of a fool's errand, and kind of a I don't know if there's a point to it, but if I had to guess, I would say, yeah, transitional archaic early woodland is where I would situate them. Actually, maybe at a very interesting point where it's all there. It's there's a little bit of everything there. The fact is that we don't know if those were all deposited together, if they belong to the same period, really. If do they cover like centuries? Who knows? There's the one that I said is very terminal archaic in appearance, is much more weathered than the other ones, is kind of beaten up and looking like nothing like the other ones that are made from the same material, and just looks ancient and just battered compared to the other ones. So that's kind of interesting, since it's technically maybe an older style of point. So there's a lot there, but there's not that much to hold on to if you want to make any kind of clear assessment of what's going on. Like I said, no indication really of burial, apart from those artifacts that could be associated with a burial. So
you in your thesis you speculated about a natural inspiration for the shape of the bifaces.
Yeah.
Sorry, I meant to phrase that as a question.
Yeah.
I was waiting for the question mark.
Yeah. So I think so. What do you think? What do you think was the inspiration for the craftsperson? What kind of drew you to this sort of interpretation about it? And for the listener, it was not Solutreans, and we should talk about that for just a moment, actually, before you describe what your interpretation was, or maybe what the inspiration for these blades are coming from. What are the other interpretations?
I'm going to tell you what it actually is.
What are the other interpretations? And that this is what Gabe and Alex have been hamming up about the whole time. But there is a philosophy, or there is I don't know if it's a philosophy. It's a particular paradigm for the populating of North America that draws inspiration from across the ocean. And the Bristol bifaces have fit into a broader Solutrean hypothesis narrative. Is that right?
Yeah, and interestingly, Clarke is one of the first ones, I think, to come up with that. And in his book in the 60s, in 1968, I think, is someone before us. And I think he in the book he mentions that he made the connection right away because he had an old book of old world archaeology, and he recognized those laurel leaf shaped bifaces and bipointed points as and I mean he's right, they look a lot like the Solutrean points of France that date back to I think 40,000 years ago, something like that, in that range.
22,000 to 17,000. Upper Paleolithic in
okay, so I was
coastal
wrong.
France, yeah.
But it's an amazing site. I was there. The rock of Solutrean. It's like the Lion King kind of a big stone kind of jutting out of a fairly flat landscape, and it was a kill site, like a kind of a head smashed in kind of place. Cool. So very cool site to visit. But but that's just like looking at pyramids in Egypt and pyramid in Mesoamerica and saying, oh, that has to be the same thing. It's I'm a napper. I'm a flint napper, and if you want to make something as long as possible, it's gonna end up being a bipoint. It's just, there's no way around it. I mean, you can make like a big triangular point, but you could make it even bigger by putting another triangular point at the base of it. It's just like.
That's right, listener. You came here for the archaeology, and we are getting a lesson in geometry as well.
Yeah. Just like if you're piling up rocks, it's gonna end up in a pyramid shape. It's just laws of nature and geometry.
But we should say that that people have actually hypothesized that Solutreans colonized North America.
I think across the Atlantic ice.
Yeah. None of us believe that, listener, and nor should you.
No.
So. But you came up with a really interesting.
If you want to, we'll put a link to that book in the show notes.
But
there's a couple good YouTube videos.
Yeah, really, eh? But you came up with a fairly evocative way of thinking about what may have inspired some of these shapes for the people who made the Bristol bifaces.
Yeah, so I realized that I've talked very little about the actual bifaces in this very verbose outburst that I've been having for an hour now. But some of them have another kind of feature that I picked up on while looking. The thing is, I spent like 2 years with those bifaces in a dark lab where some like rotten fish was boiling and there was some leakage of all kinds of some nuclear experiments doing that building. So you start seeing patterns start emerging. And I was looking at the just kind of dimension of the bifaces and noticed that a lot of them have kind of an offset apex to their sides. So try to explain that, like they're both curved side, like convex sides, but on one side, the broadest part of it is going to be higher than on the other side, which is kind of unusual for stone tools. You don't see that a lot. There's a lot of symmetry in stone tools usually, unless they've been heavily used and refit and then resharpened and worn like that, where you're going to see like an old like a knife that has a long use life is going to be completely offset and very asymmetrical. But we have here asymmetry that's on purpose. Those things, they haven't been retouched extensively. Some of them are pretty much pristine the way they were made. So those that feature that asymmetry also have asymmetry at the tip, where there's a slight on one side, a slight concave section just below the tip, which makes it so that the tip is a little curved, it looks like it's curving a little bit to one side. And I'm waiting for the curved tip jokes, and they're not coming.
It's a family podcast.
I know, but they're to me very evocative of leaves. We talk about, there's a lot of talk about leaf-shaped bifaces in the literature, kind of as a catch-all term for bifaces that aren't completely triangular or just kind of a broad base and rounded sides, but not defined by a strictly geometric shape. And in my thesis, I argue that I think some of them are actually like literally leaf shaped, that they are meant to represent actual tree leaves. And because you look at the leaves of like nut trees, for example, maybe butternut or ash trees or cherry trees or elm leaves, they do have that offset that's very, I think elm trees especially have that very clear offset and the little curved tip on the end there. And I think there is some morphological symbolism imbued in those bifaces.
That's very cool, and all kind of probably reflective of the landscape in which the people who made the bifaces found themselves in, right?
I mean, those people have been there for 40,000 years, so they would have seen the environment evolve from a kilometers thick ice cap to a deciduous forest. But no, really, people living in the forested landscape that would have been dependent on trees and for all kinds of reasons. In all aspects of their lives and living lives that are guided by the seasons and all that. I think to me it's it could seem far-fetched to some people thinking, oh, that's kind of pushing it, but I think that there is some symbolism of the natural environment in what people are making. I think it's kind of unavoidable. I think it's you're working with nature and you're reproducing nature, and I'm not pretending that I can explain what or why or what really is the point behind it or what's going on there. But to me, there's I think it's fascinating. And that's what I think that to some degree we can't get much further than that. I think with archaeology on some topics like this, where it seems like there's some symbolism there, but without any with only kind of material evidence. I don't know if we can get any further than that in that direction, really.
I think that's, in all honesty, the best place we could stop is very evocative. Like I said, folks, he's as eloquent in English as he is in French, and so Alex, unless there's anything else you had to say, we really appreciate you coming on.
There's actually one last thing I wanted to bring up that came to my attention, and I'm going to try to be brief, to my attention very recently.
Oh.
And it was an article from 1905, I believe, from American anthropologist about the obsidian blades of California, which, seems a little removed from our topic, but I don't know if you've heard of Horatio Rust. He was a Massachusetts guy, I believe, that ended up on the West Coast during the gold rush.
Did he have a 6-shooter at his hip all the time? Like,
oh yeah, a big iron going there. And he ended up kind of being a bit of a Clarke, except he was collecting from the actual people. He would just go and visit the different tribes there and then buy their possessions, which, is very, very, it's not great. And the way he talks about it here is not great, but it's very interesting. And there's actually... there's an archaeologist kind of Horatio Ross is giving his story of going and buying those bi-pointed big obsidian blades from the what's their name, the Hoopa of California, and I do hope I'm pronouncing that right. So they would have large bi-pointed obsidian blades that were used in the white deerskin, what was called the white deerskin, and that's all kind of reported fairly, I would say, solidly, because that was still going on at that point in the late 19th century, and those big bifaces were used in the ceremony. So I thought that was very interesting because that was the first report I saw of, using big bi-pointed bifaces in an indigenous ceremony in North America, even though it's very far from our zone of going to say zone of investigation. There you go.
Cool.
And those bifaces were an indicator of status and wealth. And they were kind of just held in the hands while different speakers were coming to the ceremony to kind of give speeches. It was a world renewal ceremony.
Neat.
And there's a lot of interesting parallels. Those bifaces often came in pairs, and often one was stemmed and one was unstemmed. And it was large bifaces accompanied with smaller ones. Some of them were mounted to a stick to be kind of wielded in the ceremony. And they were kept concealed outside of the ceremonies, kind of buried under a house somewhere. So they passed down as heirlooms, very, very valued for their length and colors. And so, I thought it was a very interesting glimpse into what, how artifacts like that might have been part of ritual or ceremony. And in this case, they're just kind of, and it's obviously, maybe 3,000 years later and on the other side of the continent. But there's
you'd
still
almost say, Gabe, that it's complex.
It is complex.
It is. We're back to the theme, listener.
We're back. He did it, Alex, without even planning it. We landed it with our season theme somehow.
Complexity, man.
All right. Well, I think we're all looking at possibly our second half finished glass of Courvoisier. So, Alex, it was a pleasure having you on. Thanks for joining us and telling us about the Bristol site.
Yes,
pleasure.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, great to see you, buddy.
What an honor. Great to see you guys.
All right, Ken, I think it's time for hit pieces.
I think it is.
We're maybe going to open up. You've got an interesting hit piece from out of our usual locale here by DJ Seymour.
Yeah. So we're kind of been interested ourselves in Borderlands recently. You and I have been having a number of discussions about this, and this.
In fact, we just learned today that someone had written the book we were discussing editing.
Well, so and as I mentioned in our text conversation, so I have colleagues who are human geographers, and like Borderlands are like a whole kind of like world of thinking in geography, right? So I don't think we came, we certainly didn't come up with the idea, but
No.
The Borderlands book that you found, I think, is probably the area which I'm talking about, which is sort of the Spanish borderlands region. So we're talking about in the 16th century as the Spanish are kind of pushing into North America. And so the listener, if they went back to an episode in our, I believe, our second season, where we interviewed Dimity Hammond about when the computer first came to New Brunswick, I think was what the title was. But Dimity did her master's on the Holtz Point site. Yeah. And so, but Dimity now lives in the southwest of the United States and was involved in a project, I think that is either the one that she was talking about and had sent us kind of a draft of some of the work that was going on in that region, or this is tying in with, there's a debate basically about Francisco Coronado's expedition, or one of his expeditions basically through the southwest of the United States. And so Coronado kind of made his way through. There's been some debate about what happened at certain points during that expedition. And essentially what it looks like is that the findings of this paper by Denny Seymour, Extraordinary Claims, Extraordinary Evidence, the Coronado Expedition's 1541 Soya Settlement. You have evidence, for example, of the establishment of what was probably the first permanent European settlement in the American Southwest. And this is a town called San Geronimo III, or Soya. And there is also, this is also the first site that's been located south of a site called Zuni in Arizona, which is kind of considered the sort of the hallmark of definite evidence of Coronado's presence there. And there is, alongside structural evidence at this site, also evidence for conflict of some kind, right? So there's arrows and cannon, crossbows, all sorts of, basically there's some kind of skirmish, and it seems to lead archaeological credence to some of the historical accounts of indigenous groups in the region attacking and overthrowing this settlement at one point. And so it is a fascinating article, in part because it documents a really important time, 1541, during the early Spanish presence in North America. It documents what appears to be the first permanent settlement in the American Southwest, and also appears to document the first uprising by indigenous people against Europeans in that region.
Very interesting. That's great, Ken. And then our second hit piece is by Olivia Olson, and it is an MSc thesis in the Climate Change Institute at the University of Maine, and it's called Birdsong: Human-Bird Relationships During the Ceramic Period in Wabanaki Homeland, a case study at the Fraser Point site, ME 44-49, Scoodic Peninsula, Maine. And so this paper, or this thesis rather, is about bird bones, basically. So it's a zooarch study of this site. And it's interesting because it considers both social and subsistence and spiritual aspects of life there. And so, taking it as kind of a jumping off point, David Sanger recovered a bird bone flute from this site back in the 70s, I believe.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that's kind of where this jumps off from. And then it just points out that birds have kind of been under-considered in the archaeology of the Wabanaki homeland. And so she discusses that extensively. Good resource, useful work, and it considers, as I mentioned, something we haven't thought a whole lot about. Plus, the bird bone flute is very cool.
Yeah, exactly. So thinking about faunal remains not just as subsistence goods, but also probably, in the sort of patchy examples we have of like artwork and we don't really think about musical instruments. There's that kind of cool research about lithophones, like that I've kind of followed out of fascination about some of these groundstone tools actually operating as instruments rather than as so this is really cool. So did she find additional evidence for musical instruments among the assemblage, or is it that the flute is sort of the standalone?
In this assemblage, so there apparently, I think, and I could be wrong about this, but my understanding is that it's the only one from Fraser Point, but that she looks at there are other bird bone flutes that are known.
Oh, cool.
And she tracks continuity in the form of the flutes, basically from the Archaic period into the Ceramic period.
Very neat. Very cool. So, so I have not read this thesis yet, but I came across it and thought, looking forward to seeing the work that comes out of this, but also probably some essential reading here, maybe over the holidays.
Absolutely. There's nothing quite like curling up with a spiced Courvoisier in front of the fireplace and reading an MSc thesis on bird zooarchaeology, Ken.
Exactly. Yep.
Well, Ken, I think we've come to the end of another New Brunswick Archaeology podcast.
I think so. And listener, I hope you enjoyed a little bit more New Brunswick content. And as Gabe hinted in the intro, some exciting stuff going on here. And if this clips out weird, my children came and visited the New Brunswick Archaeology podcast in Studio 346 just a moment ago. Gabe got to see some lovely artwork for Great Grandma.
It's true.
Yeah,
it looks great.
So
yeah, we should get them to do our cover art.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've got some New Brunswick specific content. We're going to be heading up to the subarctic for a stint, and we're also going to be visiting kind of a legend in archaeology, some Indiana Jones and the Ark of the Covenant. So we're going to be speaking with a colleague of mine, Kevin McHugh, about a recent book that he has had come out, Readers of the Lost Ark. And we figured that'd be probably a good tie-in to the holiday season. And of course, we're going to do our holiday episode, Gabe, that everybody celebrates each year.
And we might actually try to drop our holiday episode during the holidays this year. We've in the past, it's sort of been a mid-January episode, I believe.
Yeah, we'll do a better job of getting the production sequence lined up on that. So, but yeah, and exactly, and stay tuned, listener. We've got stuff planned out into the new year, but always, if there's something that you're interested in hearing about, and maybe a particular site. Or if a particular topic you'd like us to loop back around to or dive into more deep, we're happy to hear suggestions, and you can reach us on email, newbrunswickarchaeology@gmail.com. Find us on the web, newbrunswickarchaeology.com. And
how many words is that?
That's all one word. Archaeology spelled ARCHAEOLOGY. And on Instagram @new_Brunswick_archaeology. Check out our YouTube channel. We've got new content going up all the time. There's going to be video podcasts with actual like human beings in them, not just a waveform on the screen. We'll probably be doing some digital shorts, some clipping and stuff like that. So you should see some more NB ArcPod content out there. And we are working our way towards the next live episode, which looks to be next spring in Canmore at the Canadian Archaeology Association's annual meeting.
Yeah, and we're looking forward to seeing folks there.
Yeah. So if you're coming to the conference, come check it out. And if you want to experience an archaeology conference or just come to Canmore because it's beautiful and check out a podcast one night, we'll be there.
Plus, if you want to see Ken and I in Western wear, this will be
exactly
one of your opportunities.
Yeah. We got to get our 10-gallon hats, or what is it, 18 liters or something?
18-liter hats, I think. Yeah,
18-liter hats all ready to go.
Yes. Alrighty, Ken. Well, enjoy Saskatoon, and listener, we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, talk to you soon, listener.
Gabe Hrynick and Ken Holyoke. The New Brunswick Archaeology Podcast.